Well, it sure checks a lot of boxes, guys, I can certainly say that, but it does have some shortcomings. So let's go over a little bit of it today in a full review of the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500s. Available in a variety of sizes, the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 can be found through a number of sources, including the usual suspects like Amazon and eBay, as well as Discount Tire and Tire Rack, making it an extremely accessible tire. In my particular case, I'm running two 75/35 19s in the rear, two 55/40 19s in the front, all on 19 by 9.5 inch wheels, front and back. They are a 340 treadwear tire with a traction and temperature rating of A and a speed rating of W. I've been running this tire now for a few months on my 2015 Infiniti Q50, probably over 2,000 or 3,000 miles. We're making about 335 horsepower to the wheels, about 280 foot-pounds of torque, just to give you an idea of what we're working with. Also in Greenville, South Carolina, so the northern part of the state. The tires were installed in October-ish. It's currently just before Christmas in December. So we really had an opportunity to drive this car in a number of different situations while having the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 installed, including warm weather temperatures, freezing temperatures, rain. We've pushed the car a little bit in the corners. We've also done a few launches. The tires have been thoroughly broken in at this point. We've done a little bit of testing in terms of straight line launches and the like. So we have an idea of how these tires perform in a variety of conditions and situations. I should state as well that this is indeed a rear-wheel drive vehicle, so it's something to take into account if you're considering these tires. So let's get into it. Let me go through the boxes that these tires do check, and then we'll go over some of the shortcomings that I mentioned earlier in the video. Number one has to be appearance. These are very visually appealing tires. I love how these tires look, both in terms of the aggressive tread pattern, but as well as the simplicity of the sidewall. I don't like sidewalls that are very busy with a bunch of cross hatching and different textures and whatnot. These are very simple. Firestone Firehawk Indy 500s, a little bit of detailing here, but just the basic information that you need, and that's it. Subtle, understated, aggressive, and meaty. They meet all the visual components that I'm looking for in an aggressive tire. The Firehawk Indy 500s are able to absorb and dissipate heat relatively well, so they're going to allow you to keep traction on the track even through some pretty significant abuse. So that's something really to take into consideration, considering the value of these tires overall. I would say a speed rating of W is sufficient, especially when you compare it to some of the other tires in its class. People that are really going for a super high performance tire, going with Michelin Pilot Sport PS4Ss or the Toyo Proxy R888Rs, they're spending a significant higher amount of money on their tires and therefore expect a certain amount of performance above and beyond what the Firehawk is going to provide. Although I will say that these are able to compete in a lot of situations. I would say these tires fit true to size as well. That's another concern when you're shopping high performance tires. A lot of people are going for a grippy tire, and they go toward a sort of budget friendly tire. These pop up, but also the Federal tires will pop up as well, and those are known to fit substantially larger than what their sizing is. Again, these are 275/35 19 on a 9.5 inch wheel, so you can see they actually are quite square. There's essentially no bulging. However, if you were to run a Federal of the same size on this same wheel, you might get a little bit of a sidewall bulge. Not the case again with the Firehawk Indy 500. In terms of just general comfort, I would say these tires are excellent. Actually, they're very quiet, especially if you're comparing them to other ultra high performance tires that can typically have that wow noise when you're on the interstate. These tires don't have that noise at all. They're very quiet, as I said, and their comfort level in the ride is pleasant as well, even though we are running with an aspect ratio of only 35 on a 19-inch wheel, which you would expect a relatively harsh ride, especially if you're lowered like I am. But again, that's not the case with these Firehawk Indy 500s. They are very comfortable. They feel very cushy on the road, and I couldn't ask for more in terms of comfort. There's a lot to be said, most definitely, about a tire that really is pretty budget friendly, all things considered, but that is also comfortable and quiet on the road, because for the most part, a lot of us that are going after a budget friendly performance tire, the reason we're doing so is because we also drive this car on a daily basis. So we need something that's quiet and comfortable and not going to be obnoxious on the interstate, but also is going to perform on the weekends when we need it to. And that's another box that this Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 checks. In warm, dry conditions, these tires perform as well as you could possibly want them to perform. I'm sure if they got a lot of heat in them, they could get a little bit greasy. Again, they're a 340 tread wear, so you know, they'll last you quite a while, but they're going to get you the grip that you need when you need it. They handle aggressive cornering pretty well as well. If you are aired down a little bit lower like myself, around 30 psi, you might feel a little sidewall rollover in a really aggressive cornering situation, but that can be accounted for or accommodated for with airing up slightly. And not necessarily even airing up, just having them aired up to specification, 32 to 35 psi or so. In cold conditions, I really honestly don't have any complaints either. I would say that in below freezing temperatures, because the compounds are a bit softer, again, 340 treadwear tire, a little bit soft. They can get a bit hard, but I will say that they come up to temperature relatively quickly. So if you're going down the road, you'll be able to tell. They feel a little bit harder. You can hear them a little more. You can feel the imperfections in the road a bit more obviously than you normally would. However, they come up to temperature really, really quickly. So just a few minutes down the road and they're back to their soft, pliable selves. Oftentimes when you're running ultra high performance tires like this, you run into wet traction issues. I think some people have even said that the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500 has trouble in wet conditions. Well, honestly, I haven't experienced that myself. I drive the interstate every single day, and that requires me to drive through heavy rains on occasion as well. And we just so happen to have some heavy rains at just above freezing temperatures the other day, and the car handled flawlessly, even taking curves on the interstate at 70-75 mile an hour. The car felt planted, and I was very, very comfortable. And again, we're on a lower profile tire, 335, 340 horsepower to the rear wheels, and we also have Hotchkiss sway bars on the stiffest setting. So if there were ever a chance to have the rear end kick out, it would be in conditions like that, heavy rains and cool temperatures. Now, would I run these tires all year round if I lived in the Midwest or the Northeast, for example, where it gets below freezing or below zero temperatures on a regular basis and snows? Obviously not. An ultra high performance tire is not meant to be driven in conditions like that. But if you're in the South, like South Carolina, Texas, Georgia, Florida, areas where it can get down to freezing from time to time, you get some cold rain, I think you could certainly run these tires all year round and not have to worry about it. Obviously use caution, but I don't think I'll be switching these out this winter. So we have done several 0 to 60 pulls at this point. We did give the tires about 500, 600, 700 miles of braking in. That's kind of what I had read was necessary for these tires before they really got to their optimum levels of performance and their grip capabilities. But I immediately saw improvements in my 0 to 60 times with these tires. Like the first 2 pulls that I made were dramatic improvements over what I was running consistently prior to their installation. They take very, very little prep on the street anyway. I'm sure they would perform really, really well on a prepped track, but just in the street, doing street pulls, just a little bit of a spin, get them warmed up a little bit. Generally the second pull is better than the first, to spin quite a bit in the first one, but then when you come back immediately and try to do a second hit, they grip up pretty well. So now they don't act like a street legal drag radial, for example. I would say a regular high performance street tire sort of operates optimum grip probably 10 to 20% cooler than a drag radial. You'll never reach those temperatures just driving around on the road, depending on the ambient temperature in the area. So you'll never be able to just drive up, pull up to a line and make a hit and expect to get grip. The tires just aren't warm enough. For example, if you think you're going to drive 15, 20, 30 miles to the drag strip, immediately roll right up to the starting line, the tires aren't going to be warm enough. They'll get to operating temperature, 110, 115 degrees. And as you sit there and you wait in the staging lanes, the tires are going to cool down. So, doing a quick little burnout, it doesn't have to be a big smoky burnout, but just enough to get the tires cleaned off, get some of that road debris cleaned off, and get a little bit more heat cycled through the tires. That's going to help the rubber grip up. And that's something that's become very, very evident and very, very apparent over the years, but with these tires in particular, like I said, the second and third 0 to 60 pull is always better than the prior. Another thing that I want to mention that I found in straight line performance with these tires is that airing them down slightly helps quite a bit as well. Normally I would run 32 to 35 PSI in a regular street tire just for commuting, and that's kind of typical what you see recommended for street tires. For these, I've found that airing down to about 30 or even 29 PSI helps significantly with straight line grip. Again, these don't act like drag slicks or drag radials, so airing them down to 17, 18, 19 PSI, that's not going to do anything more. Even going down as far as 25 or 27, it's really not necessary. The sidewalls just aren't constructed the same way. So airing down a little bit allows you to increase your contact patch slightly, but you reach a point of diminishing return, as I was saying. So I wouldn't go much lower than 29 PSI at all if you're just really trying to improve grip. Also, a meaty sidewall helps with traction on a street tire. Again, we're at a 275/35, so we're running a pretty thin sidewall. So airing down again down to about 29-ish and having them nice and warm has helped a lot. And speaking of burnouts, another thing that I like about these tires is that they smoke right up. Everybody loves a nice, dirty, smoky burnout. Obviously, you don't want to burn off, $400 worth of your tires in just a couple of months, but they do smoke up nice if you want them to, and that is another box that they can check. And I sort of alluded to it there, the price. They are at this size about $200 per tire, which really isn't all that bad considering the tires that they do compete with, the Michelin Pilot Sport PS4Ss, the Toyo Proxys, R888Rs. I mean, we're talking significantly more expensive than these tires. I'm pretty happy with these Indy 500s at this point, but let's talk a little bit about the negatives, shall we? So I only have a couple of complaints about the Firehawk Indy 500s, and they're very, very minor in the grand scheme of things, but I will say that number one is that the sidewalls are a little bit soft. I did talk about how you can accommodate for that by airing up to 35, 36 PSI, but I like to stay around 29 or 30 PSI because I never know when I'll just want to make a test hit. The Lexani LX20s that I had prior did have a very stiff sidewall, so I could stay at that 30 PSI, which would optimize my grip, although it was pretty terrible in straight lines. They were just fine in the mountains or on the twisty roads of Paris Mountain. If I wanted to make a quick little mountain run on the weekend, I didn't have to worry about airing up or airing down. They were fine right there at that 30 PSI point. The Firehawk 500s, if I'm going to run in the mountains, I don't want them to be at 30 PSI. I need to air them up, at least the fronts, so we don't get that rollover. That heavy nose causes those tires to roll over. The rears are just fine at 30, but the fronts I will have to make adjustments on, and I prefer to not have to do that. Not that big of a deal. And the second complaint is that although they are significantly better than the Lexanis in straight line performance, definitely a lot more grip. Like I said, they've greatly improved my 0 to 60 times. I would say 325, 330 horsepower is reaching their limits on a rear-wheel drive car. All-wheel drive car, no problems whatsoever. These would be a fantastic all-around tire. Great, but very, very budget-friendly, a lot of grip, quiet and comfortable. Dual performance in the curves or in straight lines, they're great. However, if you're a rear-wheel drive and you're pushing, we'll just say 350 horsepower, that's probably maxed at what these can handle if you're really trying to launch hard. They break loose. When I try to launch without even power braking or anything, just straight off the brake, mash the pedal to the floor, the first hit especially, they're going to spin. Second hit is a little better. Third is even better still. But if I were to try to launch at any significant RPM, 1500, 2000 RPM, they're going to break loose. Now at a prep track, they probably do just fine. But if you're in the street or in the streets of Mexico, I'd say if you're up over that 350 horsepower point, you're going to be finding its weakness. So again, very quick overview, budget-friendly tire, $200 a piece at this size, 275, 35, 19. Quiet and comfortable, soft ride for what it is. Great grip. If you're in that 300, 325, 340-ish horsepower range in a rear-wheel drive vehicle, it's going to be significantly better than most tires in this price range. They seem to dissipate heat quite well, so you can really be aggressive in the corners, and the tires are going to feel responsive and grippy and confidence inspiring. So that is a very big bonus. I haven't had issues with them in the rain, 0 issues whatsoever. Even when it got a little colder, around 35, 39 degrees Fahrenheit, the tires performed just fine on the interstate at those temperatures. I would not use them in the winter. I would not use them in the snow or freezing rain. Not meant for it. Ultra high performance tire. You're just dumb if you try. Negatives, a little bit soft sidewall. If you're going to do a lot of twisty roads, you're going to want to stay aired up quite a bit. But just get ready to reduce the tire pressure a bit if you want to improve your traction in straight line. And if you're up over 350, 400, 500 horsepower rear wheel drive car, go really wide, but you might have to start thinking about investing in some even grippier tires. Get into the Nittos, the Toyo Proxies, the PS4Ss. Just prepare to get out the checkbook. If you have any questions about the Firestone Firehawk Indy 500, I guess that would be another complaint. It's the name is too damn long. But if you have any questions about these tires, leave them in the comment section below. I'll get to every single one of them as soon as I possibly can. Great overall tire. Very, very impressed, especially considering the price point. Happy with them so far. I'll continue to update these videos as we wear these tires in even further. I hope the video was helpful. If you're considering getting these tires, I would definitely recommend them. Just think about some of the things we talked about in this video. And again, leave a comment in the comment section if you need some additional information. Thank you guys very, very much for watching. I appreciate the continued support. Subscribe if you haven't already. We'll see you in the next one.